Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I want to talk about how to know if you're actually making progress in your language learning. And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and they really just don't feel like they're making progress. They don't know if they're using the right method, if things are working out, should they change things up, should it be more fun than this? And it's very easy in times like this to kind of just keep spiraling until you lose motivation and quit language learning. And measuring your progress is one of the most difficult things in all of language learning. And I think it's worthwhile to understand kind of how progression works with language learning and hopefully come up with some strategies to help combat it. So I think the first thing is that language learning can be difficult from a progress perspective and this feeling of progression because in a lot of cases you don't have these very clear milestones that reinforce the idea that you are making progress and having success. So when you first start learning the language, like from ground zero, it feels very new and very novel. And there's this excitement factor, right? Like if you start a language for the first time, you didn't know anything, and then you can say a couple of words. Maybe you can say, hello, my name is, Matt or whatever, and that's exciting. But past that very initial kind of validation stage, it becomes progressively more difficult to find those milestones that give you a sense of progression, right? Because really a lot of times what you have to go on is, okay, 5 more vocabulary words, or you've been exposed to this grammar concept. And in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily very exciting that you just know 10 more words or you covered this grammar concept. There's not really this excitement factor. Versus if we look at something like learning an instrument, maybe you learn a new song on a guitar, there is this kind of clear song, this clear idea that you now know this and you didn't know it before. With language learning, it's very difficult, especially because with compelling content, the range of difficulty varies quite a bit. So, you can read one newspaper article and it has a certain subsection of vocabulary words, and then another article has a different subsection of words. And one might be very easy, one might be very hard. So the idea that you have learned 5 more vocabulary words might not even necessarily help you on one article versus another or either of them. So it can be very difficult because of the compelling content and the range of difficulty and the range of just possibilities from a word and grammar perspective to feel like you're making progress, right? And then just learning 5 words, learning some grammar here and there isn't necessarily the most just kind of memorable, exciting progression point. And the thing about it is that I would consider language learning, it's very much like a step function. And not to get too mathematical on here, but really what that is basically think of language learning progress like you're climbing a staircase, right? There's this kind of horizontal section of the staircase, and then there's this straight vertical part, and it forms these steps. Well, basically, in a lot of cases, what happens with language learning is that you just kind of go through this period where you don't feel better at the language. You're just kind of grinding along. Maybe you're listening to audio content, you really don't understand anything, and then one day something just clicks and you start to hear the audio content a lot better. You can pick out a couple of words, and then it just stays like that for a while. And then after a while you start to understand the meaning of things, and then it just gets easier and easier and easier. Well, that's kind of how language learning works a lot of times. Whether it's with speaking, you just kind of feel like speaking is a little bit less difficult. It's more effortless. Maybe reading is just easier. You just feel like you know more words. Language learning very much kind of works in this step function like manner where you just feel like progress, which is that vertical part of the staircase or stair step, and then you reach this, and then you go through another period where you're crossing the horizontal part of the stair step where it just doesn't feel like you're making progress. And this can be very difficult, especially at the beginning, where you just feel like there's no signs that you're actually making progress, right? Like if you're consuming compelling content, I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to get those milestones, right? Where you read it for the first time, or you can progressively, understand more difficult Netflix shows or more difficult reading material. But especially at the beginning, those horizontal periods can just feel very overwhelming. and it just feels like you're not making progress. You learn some words, but it's just really not helping. And I think that in situations like this is why goals are so important, because goals kind of, I think, help to connect each staircase or each step of the staircase together, right? So while you're crossing through this horizontal part of the step, you have a goal, right? Let's say it's the amount of time that you study every single week, or learning this many vocabulary words, or going over the present tense in this, and then next week it's the past tense or the future tense or something like that. And so it almost kind of acts as this curve that connects each horizontal part of the the stairs together. And so while you're crossing this period where it doesn't feel like you're making progress, you have these goals that you're following, you're tracking, you're trying to achieve, that help to connect everything together, right? Where you know you're making progress because you're putting that time in, and you can see the results as you track them and go on along the process. So I think that this is really where, in a lot of cases, goals shine, is because in those periods where you're not facing that kind of step function progression, you have goals to kind of reinforce this idea that you are indeed making progress. And the thing about it is that, even if it's just a small amount of time, you're always progressing with language learning, right? Even just for 15 minutes of listening as you get ready for the day, that's helping you, right? It might not seem like it is, but it totally is. You're getting more comfortable with the sounds in the language. You're getting better at listening. Even just learning 5 new vocabulary words, that helps, that adds up. You have to invest that time. It takes time for your brain to process, to get comfortable with vocabulary, for it to be able to be used as active vocabulary, or to be used just kind of subconsciously, to be processed subconsciously. It takes time. And it's in those phases where I think a lot of people get discouraged, and they really have this doubt that, if they're making progress or not. And like I said, at the beginning stages, it's very easy to feel this way. But like I said, language learning, at least in my opinion, tends to move in this step function-like manner. And to kind of help you to just feel like you're making progress, goals and goal tracking can just be massive for that kind of helping you to have that feeling that you are making progress. But the reality is that, as you do language learning 30 minutes every day, an hour, whatever it is, you are making progress. It just feels like you're not. It can be very difficult to decipher whether or not you are getting better at the language. And like I said, there's just not really a lot of very easy ways to test your language skills on a week-by-week basis, right? Maybe with compelling content at times, but even then it's sporadic. It's not like learning an instrument where you have a lot more clear milestones to rely on for a feeling of success. So I think that the key here is just to realize that a lot of times language learning moves in this step function-like manner, and one way to kind of help to feel like you're making progress is to combine your language learning with goal progress, to track your goals, to have just kind of a record to make sure that you're constantly making progress, and to reinforce this idea in your mind. So that's what I had to say on the subject. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.